monogamous animals out here did not look for new partners because the risk of losing one is fairly high with all the lion and leopard and other predators running around. So it's important that they do have the ability to join up and find new partners if they do lose one, so that they can ensure future generations of steenbok are continued. Okay, well, we're going to continue off as the steenbok disappears into a little bit more thick bush. Morning, Lex. Very good. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
How things?
Well.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, very good.
Good, man.
Very good. Nice to have you back.
Yeah, it's lucky to be back, man.
How long are you here for?
4 nights.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There was this male lion tracks at Shabam Junction. They came up from Treehouse Dam, and then I would have assumed they would continue here, but they haven't. So
okay.
Somewhere around here.
Okay.
At this next junction, you can have a quick look.
We had that one at the where the Hyena Den road enters.
Yeah.
Across the road from there is that road that goes down.
Okay. Yeah.
Into the dip. He went down there and then turned and came up the game path.
Okay.
This way.
Okay, because our tracks along Fullerman's cut line for a while, and then they disappeared. Then from Treehouse Dam
coming from
back up
from the east.
Yeah, from the east.
Oh, so he might have come back onto and then turned down towards
Treehouse Dam, and then found the tracks coming up Savage's track back to this junction.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. All right.
Cool. Well, good luck, and we will see you later.
Okay.
Okay. Cheers. Okay, sorry about that, folks. But like I say, we don't get to see many newcomers out here, and it's important to stop and chat and make sure everyone's doing okay. It's a very friendly environment out here in the bush. And it often takes a little bit of getting used to when you do get back to a city where people naturally are coming across a lot more people on a daily basis. You find they don't really have too much time to sit and chat, whereas out here we've got more than enough time and not enough people to chat to. Jennifer in Toronto. Good morning, and it's good to have you with us. Jennifer would like to know, how do steenbok go about finding mates? Is there some kind of a yearly convention where they can go and exchange business cards and life plans? And no, there certainly isn't, Jennifer. They will naturally move off from their parents' territory when they not necessarily become sexually mature, but when they become mature enough to move off on their own. And then they will fight for and establish a territory. Interestingly, steenbok are quite highly territorial, and females and males will even compete between one another for little patches of territory. So there's quite violent territorial fights between even male and female steenbok. And there's no saying or set formula as to how they will meet their partner or what process will unfold. But Mother Nature seems to work things out, and I guess like humans, there's no set formula to find a boyfriend or a girlfriend. In this day and age, I guess the internet can be one way that you can go about it, or an old-fashioned date is another way. So there's no set formula even for our lives, and it can often be fairly similar in nature. There will be a general rule that is followed, but then each individual scenario that unfolds will be slightly different. Was Bahuti that was killed. We did see one picture of the dead cub and compared it to that of a Bahuti picture, and it certainly didn't look like Bahuti, and that's not only my opinion, but several guides' opinion on the matter. Some leopard tracks here. Just want to check carefully. Oh no, hang on. I'm about to get very disappointed with myself. I may have confused a hyena track with a leopard track, which is unacceptable. Okay, well, I think it's just an old leopard track that confused me. There's one individual track that hasn't been driven over, and then there were some fresh hyena tracks continuing on from that position. So that's where the confusion came in there. False alarm, not a leopard, or it was a leopard, but an old leopard. An interesting track of an animal that we don't see very often. Now I'm going to try and point it out to you, just to confirm that they do actually exist here. And again, if you just look over my right shoulder, you'll see, oh no, where have they gone? I think it's further to the right here. You'll see these tracks. It's not easy to see, but as Jean-Andre zooms in just a little bit up in this flat light, we are not being able to pick up the tracks. But there's a good lesson in this. Those are porcupine tracks crossing the road. But sadly, the further tracks are difficult to point out. The pad marks that would be the characteristic feature to look for when looking at porcupine tracks. But like I say, in flat light without sunshine, it's very difficult to see tracks because you're not getting the shadow cast around the rims from low angle, and it's the same as if the sun's directly above us. So tracking in the middle of the day or in overcast weather is very tricky, and you'd prefer to try and do it at first light or in the late afternoon. Any updates?
Not really. Garner's on the nets and
okay.
The sticks and the Honduras on vessels, and that's right.
Okay, and the timbers?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then this side, nothing really much happening.
Okay.
Just checking. I did see Ingrid Kunz right here as I came around the corner now.
Okay, cool. Okay, awesome, Doug. Impala. No, an elephant. Doug will tell you. Cheers, guys. Sorry about that, folks. Okay. So Doug's just come across from Arathusa, which is where we are heading now. The male lion tracks that we saw earlier could well have been for Matimba males that were located on a property just south of us. So that's kind of reassuring for us, because it means we don't have to waste time following up on those tracks because they've already moved out of our property. But I will throw this out there that maybe, just maybe, it's not a Matimba male whose tracks I saw. Maybe it's another male from the Styx Coalition. We've yet to see them, but they have been moving through this general area. Coming towards us, and the 3-lobe back pad you can see at the back there. And as Jean-Andre zooms out, you'll notice that it walked down from into the bush onto the road. It didn't continually walk down the road, so Some nice leopard tracks there, sadly heading in the wrong direction for us though, because the property to the east of where we're all, left-hand side of that long straight road, is a no-go zone for us. But again, we must not be disheartened by animals' tracks heading in the wrong direction, because where those tracks have headed out, other tracks may have come in from the other side of Arethusa, which is the property we are now on. It was in this area where we did enjoy a wonderful sighting with Sindile, a young male leopard, yesterday. And he actually quite often does get left in this general area. Another thing to bear in mind is that even though the tracks were heading that way, he may have been left somewhere around here and can zigzag backwards and forwards and move around. And that's exactly what his tracks are explaining to me here. There's a whole array of different tracks crisscrossing this road. Come out and feed on the road. They're such pretty birds. Edward, good question. Elephants will be more inclined to eat the bark off trees during the winter months, because there's not as much green grass and foliage to feed on, and that is where the plants will often hide their nutrients or store their nutrients during the drier months, in the cambium layer of bark or in the roots themselves. So it's often the winter months where you see them really going at bark on trees. It can be from small twigs up to large trees like knobthorn trees. And what I'll do is I want to show you all the different varieties of bark that elephant will feed on as we continue our drive this morning. It'll be great if we get lucky and actually see some elephants prying off the bark of trees. There's different ways, like I said, of going about it. They can break very small branches as thick as my finger and twist them through their mouth, peeling off the bark. Or they could go up to a huge knobthorn tree and use their tusk to pry off a piece and then strip huge chunks of bark off. So different techniques depending on the size and nature of the bark they are trying to feed on, but it is certainly a winter, mainly a winter phenomenon for the elephants. I may be hearing your name incorrectly, but I think it's Pretty Nightmare who would like to know if lions would hoist their kill up into a tree similar to that of a leopard. And no, they won't. Not that I've ever seen or heard of. And interestingly enough, leopard in areas without high hyena concentrations and without lion or high lion numbers will be uninclined to hoist their kills up into trees. It's almost a learned habit of leopard in areas of other high predator concentration. And on the same breath, I've even seen leopards in Sabi Sand that will not necessarily always hoist their kill and often lose them to hyena, and or put their cubs in a very dangerous predicament feeding on the ground. So you do occasionally get some interesting throwbacks, even with the leopards and the Sabi Sands not doing it. But lions are on top of the fact that they do not really have the requirement to hoist their kill up a tree, because they can most often defend it from other animals like hyena or leopard. They are the apex predator out here, so they don't have the requirement to do it. But even if they did, they are terrible climbers and can often wound themselves quite badly in climbing accidents. I remember a terrible scene of a lioness that was trying to, I think, steal a kill from a leopard. I can't remember the finer details, but she fell as she was coming down from the tree and broke her back wedged in the fork of a tree. So lion are not good climbers. They manage to often get up the tree okay, but coming down can be the problem. This is one of my favorite road on Arethusa. So enjoy as we drive along. There's a marula grove that we're coming up to, and at this time of the year, with all the marula trees, leaves disappearing, they really do become very pretty. I'm just going to slow it down a bit so you don't get motion sickness as we drive along. But take a look in these marula trees and look for any vertical tails dangling down, paws dangling, any obscure shapes that could potentially be a leopard. It is one of the favorite trees for leopard to sleep in, and you could almost imagine a vertical tail or paws dangling down as a leopard lay there. Or even if the leopard's on the ground, we could see a kill. So any strange shapes would help us. And this is Central Road on Arethusa. If you ever come here on safari and would like your guide to take you on this beautiful stretch, you can let him know that you'd like to come on Central Road. Now, speaking of lions and leopards climbing trees, another thing that I guess we could discuss is the act of swimming. They are not inclined to swim, lion and leopard, even though if forced to, they definitely can. And I guess in certain areas like Botswana, where the Okavango Delta fills with water, lion there will become quite good swimmers and not afraid or cautious of going into water. They've become accustomed to it. Here the lion and leopard hates it and will avoid it at all costs. I have had countless amusing sightings of both lion and leopard trying to cross the Sand River, which is further south of us in the Sabi Sands. Which is interesting because it does get very hot here in the summer months, and it would almost make sense for them to lie in the water and cool down, like the hyena will, or like tigers will in India. Tigers love water and will be happy to swim in it, chase prey in it, or just lie in a puddle and relax. Whereas lion and leopard are not that way inclined. Speaking of tigers, James is heading off, who is another presenter who's on leave now. I'm very jealous. He's heading off to Russia to do a feasibility study of a tiger conservation project up there, and to go and lend some of his safari expertise to the Russians. Isn't that an exciting project to be heading off on? So I look forward to hearing tales of the tigers of Russia from James when he gets back. Speaking of other presenters, it's great to have Brent back. He's really excited to be back in the bush. And shame it's a pity he's had trouble with his vehicle yesterday on his first drive and again this morning. But it's looking like they're getting to the roots of the problem. And hopefully in the next couple of minutes, they're going to be back up and running. And we will send you across to them as soon as that happens. Little demonstration here of what exactly goes on. Now, if you look closely, you can see these lines and marks, and this is where the elephant would have come in and used its tusks to pry off this chunk of bark. Now, like I said, the marula tree doesn't strip off very easily. If this was a knobthorn tree, once the elephants had pried off a piece and pulled back, it would strip completely up the tree and potentially all the way around. This one, thankfully, is just a piece, and although it will cause a little bit of trouble for the tree in the transport of nutrients and minerals and water up to the leaves, it's not going to be life-threatening, whereas there's a marula tree up ahead that I think has been killed by the elephants. So I'm just going to shoot ahead to it and show you. It looks like the entire circumference of the tree has had the bark peeled off. That's not fresh. That's probably from last winter, it looks like. And then there's a really big marula. It looks like it may sadly have been ring-barked. Oh, look at this. And what I'm going to do is I'm slowly going to drive around the whole tree just to make sure. It looks like a murder scene. It is now. So, this unlucky marula tree has no longer got a transport system from the roots up to the rest of the tree. Look at all the tusk marks where they've used to gouge off and pry off the bark. But I mustn't paint the elephants in a negative light. I was only kidding when I was saying it was a murder scene. It is also actually the birth, you could say, of a new home for potential animals. This dead tree will now provide smaller animals and other animals with a home over the coming months. It'll provide food to termites. Cavities will be easier to make and bore into the tree, which is where birds will nest. So it will become a very important structure going forward. Even though the tree is dead, it is certainly going to provide a lot of life for other animals and smaller animals. So an important destruction that is caused by elephants. If elephants weren't killing trees and pushing down trees, they wouldn't be making homes for animals, and they also wouldn't be preventing this ecosystem turning into a forest. So very important that the elephants do cause this destruction. It would be interesting to know how old this big marula tree is. Probably, I would say, around 100 years, quite easily. They are relatively fast-growing trees, not as slow as the leadwood and some of the harder woods. And I could almost guarantee you that it's had a couple of leopards sleeping in its life. It had very comfortable looking horizontal branches. Well done to Eugene and Brian and Vim for lending a hand and getting that working again. We'll see you all a little bit later.
Morning and welcome. So finally, Brian and I are out. It's been a little bit challenging this morning, so looks like Vim and Brian and Eugene managed to fix it. So great to be out. For those of you who might be new, my name is Brent, and I've got Brian on camera, and we're going to go try and find some animals. There was reports of 2 male leopards chasing each other around this area last night. No one's managed to find any tracks that went off into the drainage line, so we're going to search around the area of Weatella Camp and see if we find anything. But excited to finally be out, and let's go find some animals. Disappeared into the grass here, Brian. That's not a bird we see too often. Let's see if I can find him. So land up on the tree. There we go. I don't know if we're going to get it from here. I'm going to go down and around, I think. Well, let's just get a safety shot quickly. So not a bird we see too often here. Quite a nice bird, a very pretty bird if it turns its throat towards us. But let's test the burgers right off the bat. And who knows what bird this is. And you can send your answers to questions@wildearth.tv. or use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. I'm just going to try and move around so we can get possibly a slightly better view. Difficult light this morning, very grey and drab. So wind by. Here we go, that should be good. Please don't fly. So there we go. Let's see if he turns towards us now. Very pretty bird. Very drab on the backside, but very, very striking colours on the front. Squeeze a little bit further forward to try to give you guys more of a hint to its name. Looks like it might not fly, so that's good. I think there's actually two of them there. There we go. Very distinct markings from the front. Found often in grassland, and both the male and female share this coloration, and this probably is a pair we're looking at now. So quite often in short grasslands, and then they'll fly up onto a tree when disturbed or when calling. Unfortunately, I think we disturbed them a little bit, but it was the only way to actually get have a nice look at them. You can see it's still quite cold because they're not extended, their sort of shoulders are humped and they're fluffing themselves up. Really, really pretty bird. We don't see them too often. They're around, but it's not often that they sit still for very long. And unfortunately, we can see, you can still hear I've got R2-D2 out in the open. With something that happened yesterday, we lost our secret comms. So I wonder who's going to be the first to get that. Sorry. Well done to Gail in Australia, who's got that spot on. It was a yellow-throated longclaw. Some parrots flying over. Good morning, Sandy from Indiana. Welcome on the back of our vehicle this not so sunny sunrise safari. Sandy would like to know whether Gustav, the legendary crocodile, is still alive or known. So for those of you not sure who Gustav is quite a famous crocodile in East Africa. He's said to live in Lake Victoria and estimated to be between 5 and 6 meters long, probably weighing about 1,500 kilograms. And he's quite famous as a man-eater as well. And there's been quite a few expeditions and even documentaries made about the search for Gustav. So he patrols quite a large area, apparently, of Lake Victoria in Uganda, I think also in Burundi, and there's a large swamp of a river that comes off in the north western side of Lake Victoria that is said to be the majority of his home range. I haven't heard anything of Gustav in a few years, but by no means does that mean he's dead. He was probably estimated around 90 to 100 years at the time, but crocodiles can live for quite a bit longer than that. So I'm quite sure Gustav is still the death from the deep and moving that area. You possibly find those really big older crocodiles would have lived through the phase of the crocodile skin handbag and shoe and before the croc farm. So they would have been shot at many, many times in the sort of 50s and 60s. And those very large crocodiles in areas like that, which were heavily hunted for skins, can be very, very difficult to see and very adept at sneaking away from people. And also with a lot of people trying to find him and whatnot, you probably find that Gustav is keeping a low profile. So I think Gustav is definitely still alive. Now crocodiles ever recorded in Africa. There have been some really, really big crocodiles discovered in the sort of last 20, 30 years. Possibly the biggest was from a place called Point Noir in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Point Noir is where the Congo River goes out to sea. And there was a crocodile there that was shot. It was just over 6 meters and weighed about 1.5 tons. It was shot by the Congolese military. Very old croc that lost most of its teeth and started eating lots of people. But it's rumored to have taken about 47 bullets from an AK-47 to get rid of this crocodile. And then also know of another crocodile that was shot on the Zambezi River in Zimbabwe, just above Lake Kariba. And that crocodile was just under 6 meters and also probably well over 1,000 kilograms. So they are definitely big crocs. Crocs of that size have lived through that hunting period, so tend to be very, very shy and secretive.
But I'm happy that you at least got to see him for a few moments and see a beautiful bird with him, the yellow-throated longclaw. I haven't seen one of those for a long time, so great to know that you got to see one. We are just approaching the Arethusa waterhole, so you've joined us at a good time, even though it was unplanned. There's not too many updates on the Game Drive channel here on Arethusa, but that's not a problem, because the mere fact that we are going to be driving through the area where we could potentially bump into the Anderson male leopard is exciting enough prospects for me, at least. We've only seen him once, and it was a brief sighting, but he's a very, very big male leopard in his prime. He was born in 2008, so about 7 years old, and he's putting a lot of pressure on Tingana, the dominant male of Arethusa, and we've noticed Tingana pushing deeper into Djuma, and that will explain why it was possibly Tingana and Mvula who interacted last night. Sadly, we didn't see the interaction, but we heard about it nonetheless, and they chased one another around quite close to the Djuma waterhole. I'm just going to stop here and allow Jean-Andre to take you on a tour of the Arethusa waterhole. I'm going to get my binoculars out and see if I can see anything interesting going on here. I can see the heads of a few hippos poking out, and as Jean-Andre zooms in, you'll also notice those hippos with just their ears, eyes and nostrils often protruding from the water. Well, there they are. Beautiful. I'm just going to do a quick head count of how many hippo I can see. Well, there's at least 7, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple more than that. And they would have been out feeding on grass last night, away from the water, and come back in the early hours of the morning to relax during the day here. And that's typical hippo behavior. They are nocturnal grazers and diurnal sleepers and wallowers. It's a beautiful light coming through onto the water. You can see the sun making a desperate attempt to punch through these clouds, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. Although just above where the sun is, there is some blue skies, so maybe a little bit later we will get some sunshine and blue skies. There's a host of different birds we can hear calling. Fork-tailed drongos being the main ones that I can tune into. But there certainly is some bird song here at the waterhole, and often it's wonderful just to stop and listen, to enjoy the sounds that are being made at the moment, but also to potentially hear some very important clues that could be given to us by animals' alarm calling. At Predators, yesterday afternoon, we raced after impala alarm calls, didn't find anything, but thankfully a few moments later managed to bump into Sindile. And Brent also followed up on alarm calls yesterday, but those weren't from impala, those were from vervet monkeys. And it was probably of one of the 2 male leopard that was seen a little bit later on yesterday evening around the Djuma waterhole. So really important information can be gathered by stopping and listening. You can sometimes get into a bit of a trap of wanting to just drive and drive faster to cover more ground in the hope that that may make you find animals. And it is a theory that does work, but I'm more inclined to stop and listen if you're not sure what to do next. As I was saying a little bit earlier, the Anderson male spends time to the west of Arethusa and south of Arethusa, and we therefore need to work the western half, which is where we are now. And I'm basically going to go back to almost the exact same place where I've only ever seen him once and drive along the western boundary in the hope that we may find any sign of him. It's not to say that we couldn't bump into other animals here as well. And it's also a beautiful, beautiful area that flows along a riverbed, or that will meander along a riverbed. So we will be certainly seeing some great scenery, some big jackalberry trees. And who knows, maybe up in one of those big jackalberry trees there's a leopard with a kill.